itisanerdything. Today's video is going to be my July wrap-up. July was a good reading month for me, and this was the first time that I had made a TBR list, and that was quite helpful in guiding me throughout the month. I read 12 books in the month of July, and 5 of them were given to me either by the publisher or by the author. Let's dive into the video to know my thoughts on the books that I read in the month of July. The first book that I finished reading this month was The Unexpected Everything by Morgan Matson. The narrative revolves around Alexandra, who is stuck with her father during the summer break as there's a background check going on her father, who is a congressman, and he is named Mr. Alexander Walker. Though it took me few chapters to get the hang of the story, but it is a well narrated and well constructed story, and since it's a long book, you get to spend a lot of time with the characters, which is pretty helpful because you get to know the characters so well and you actually become friends with the character. The father-daughter relationship and the bond of friendship that is depicted in this novel is very realistic, and it's very relatable too, as the characters are flawed and they have issues going on. So that's very well done. There's also romance going on in this book, but it doesn't take the center stage. The best part of the romance was that the author had given the characters time to fall in love, and we see how the relationships in this novel grows. It might be an instant attraction, but the way their love grows over time is something to look out for. This book made me laugh, cry, and kept me on the edge of my seat. In fact, while reading this book, I thought that I was with my friends and I was having a summer vacation with them. I gave this book a 4.5 stars, and if you're looking for a contemporary summer read, highly recommend this book. Go and pick this up. The next book that I read this month was By Your Side by Casey West. The story of this book revolves around Autumn, who is accidentally locked inside a library. This is something I would love to do. And the situation gets worse when she finds out that she is locked with Dax Miller, who she thinks is a druggie. I gave this book a 3.75 stars, and if you're looking for a cute contemporary romance novel, you can try reading this one. My only complaint was that I wanted to know more about Dax and his point of view and his perspective. So that was it. But otherwise, the book was very well constructed and very simply written. You can easily go through this book within maybe one sitting or two. So after 2 contemporary romances, I picked up 1984 by George Orwell. As you all know that I was going through a reading slump. So as soon as my reading slump got over officially, I picked up this book, and it was mind-blowing, seriously mind-blowing. If you already don't know, 1984 was published in 1949. This book displays a futuristic dystopian society. George Orwell shows us an extreme vision of totalitarian and bureaucratic world. We follow this book from Whitson Smith's perspective. This political satire by George Orwell gave me goosebumps. Imagine yourself being watched 24/7, and moreover living in a place where thinking is a crime, and the name is thought crime. Furthermore, words are being eliminated from the world and dictionaries so that people cannot express complex emotions. It's scary and creepy. I gave this book a 5 stars, of course, and I would highly recommend it to everyone if you have already not read it. After such a heavy read, I needed something light, so I picked up George's Marvelous Medicine by Roald Dahl. In the story, we follow George, who has a very cranky grandmother. This granny bothers and irritates George a lot, especially when his parents are not around. To teach his grandmother a lesson, George makes this marvelous medicine. It's a hilarious book, and I had a great time reading it, specifically the poems in this book. Only thing that I did not really like in this book was the ending. I did not think that it was quite apt for a children's book. Hence, I gave it a 4 out of 5. And if you're looking for a fun read, go for it. The next book that I read this month was The Midas Touch by Dr. Sheetal Nair. This book was sent to me by the publishers. It is a short non-fiction self-help book. In this book, Dr. Nair gives us techniques on how one can become a leader, and not only a leader, he gives us tips on how one can become a champion. I have done a full review of this book on my channel. Do check it out if you're interested. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars and would recommend it to everyone out there who is looking for a short non-fiction book. So the 6th book that I read this month was Fantastic Mr. Fox by Roald Dahl. So towards the middle of the month, I was feeling low and I wanted something very fast paced. So why not try another Roald Dahl book? So the story of this book revolves around Mr. Fox, who to feed his family steals food from 3 farmers named Bogus, Buns and Beans. So these farmers are very irritated with Mr. Fox because he's stealing their food and all the products. So you have to read this book to find out if they can catch Mr. Fox or not. As you can see, this is a very thin book, and like all Roald Dahl books, it was a fun read, no doubt about that. I gave this book a 3.5 stars, and if you have a child at home to whom you want to give some reading recommendations, you can give this book to them. And if you're looking for a children's book to make yourself feel like a child, go for it. It's a fun read. The next book that I read this month was Once There Was Me by Bobby Sachdeva. This is a semi-autobiography of Bobby Sachdeva. It is a mixture of reality and fiction. I absolutely love this book, and if you want to know my full thoughts about this book, do check out my video on my channel. The next book that I read this month was The Hour of Life by Dhrutik Shankar. Aryan, who is the narrator of this book, meets his daughter Jiva for the first time. Jiva is counting the last days of her life and she asks her father to narrate the story of life. This book is a combination of poems and short stories, and it portrays a phase or lesson of life. Along with this, there is a parallel story going on about a father and a daughter, which binds the book together. The only problem that I had with this book was that it lacked maturity. Otherwise, the book was very well executed. The poems and stories are seamlessly connected by the author. I would specifically recommend this book to children who are developing the habit of reading, as it's a very short and easy read. So the next book was sent to me by the author, and it's called Prancing Around with Sleeping Beauty by Stacey Juba. This book revolves around Rory, who is named after Sleeping Beauty, Aurora. She belongs to a family where children are named after fairy tale characters. I enjoyed reading this well constructed and well researched book. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars because of the easygoing writing style of this book, and I'm looking forward to reading more books by Stacey. If you want to know my detailed thoughts about this book, do comment below, and I would love to make a separate video for it. The next amazing book that I read this month was Godaan by Munshi Premchand. This book displays the condition of India and the struggle of poor farmers. This book also touched on other political issues, and we get to see people's view at that time on topics like feminism, the zamindari system, the use of press, etc. I will make a detailed video on this book where I would speak about it in Hindi. Those of you who cannot read this book in Hindi, I would highly recommend it to read it in the translated version, that is in English. Of course, I gave this book a 5.5 stars because it's a very deep book and it has many layers to it. Another children's book that I read this month was Always Believe by Pam Young. This is a short, simple, colorful book with a moral in it. That's the best part about children's book, that every story must contain a moral. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars and would recommend to children out there who love to read picture books. The last book that I read this month was a roller coaster ride for me. It was a very short and crisp read, but nonetheless it fulfills its premise of being a mysterious and thrilling book. Yes, I'm talking about The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn. In this book, we follow an unnamed female narrator who manipulates people by pretending to read their auras. Things change when one day Susan Burke walks in for a palm reading. This was my first Gillian Flynn book and I did not know what to expect. I'm glad that I went blank in this book. This book was all the good things. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars because it's mysterious and it's fast paced, and the ending was like, what just happened? Tell me in the comments down below which is the best book that you read in the month of July, and do let me know in the comments down below if you have read any of the books that I have mentioned in today's video. So that's a wrap for today's video, guys. Hope you liked and enjoyed watching it. Do subscribe and hit the bell icon down below to get notified when I post the next video. Until then, stay home, stay safe, and cheers to nerd life.